The first one, the major mistake, I suppose, was trying to emulate what I saw on the movies with Michael J. Fox being a rock star.
Joining me on the podcast today is David Trim, an insolvency and forensic accounting specialist, who's currently a manager at Hall Chadwick's Adelaide office. He's passionate about working in South Australia, supporting South Australian businesses that are in financial distress, guiding them with clear-cut, no-nonsense advice, and will hopefully help see them get back on their feet. David is an expert at pointing you in the right direction with a wealth of knowledge in the areas of corporate and personal financial distress, financial analysis and forensic engagements, including fraud investigations, commercial dispute analysis, and insolvency reports.
The business cycle requires rebirth and death.
His experience to date has seen him manage matters in the agribusiness and wine sectors across the state, as well as retail, manufacturing, hospitality, and construction sectors.
Hi, I'm David Trim from Hall Chadwick. Please join us on the Accountants on Purpose podcast.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bartholomeusz from ULegal. The Accountants on Purpose podcast showcases inspiring accountants who are leaders in their field.
And then it just came to me like a bolt of blue.
What makes them tick?
Love it.
How did they get to where they are?
I want to inspire.
And what do they do now for their teams, their clients, and the world? Favourite movie of all time?
I've had to think about this. 50 First Dates.
Really?
Yes.
You're committing?
Definitively, I'm committing because I did say Kill Bill for my mates.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I remember reading a story around the 8 to 10-year-old range about a guy who had this same mental condition. And then when I saw the movie and seeing it play out and how intense it was, even though it's pretty cheesy. And
it's a romantic comedy.
It's a romantic comedy, but it's also pretty funny. But just that human element, just the way those characters develop, it was just fascinating. So, yeah, 50 First Dates.
It's the human psychology side
it
of it.
It's a lot deeper than the Hawaii trip and the Drew and Adam falling in love with each other. Absolutely. It's a lot more to that, at least for me personally.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Can you name a place that you visited as a child that had a real effect on you and why?
So my mother's from Kent in the UK,
yes.
And she visited, she took us 5 kids with her and dad.
5 kids?
Yeah, 5 children.
Rewind.
On a 14-hour flight to the UK.
It's not 14 hours.
It was back then.
What?
It was something, well, at least in relation to the sort of delays and the stopovers and stuff.
Oh,
I think
okay. You
total
don't count those.
time.
All right.
So we were
I
there for a few weeks.
always think of it as at least 24 hours.
It's a long trip.
Yeah, it's a long
So we were there for a long time, actually, for a few weeks.
Good.
And we did Kent, York District, London, and also went up to Durham in Scotland. And the history and the family as well, the attachment, but it stuck with me as far as that sense of a country that's slightly different to Australia, which is very young in nature, as opposed to an established country like the UK.
And the history.
Yeah, it's still set through Europe, still with all the other countries that I've now visited as well, but especially that first one.
I was born in Oxford.
Wow.
And grew up in Edinburgh.
Yep.
So totally
You know what I'm talking
understand
about.
that. And going back as an adult, it was like something that I'd seen in a dream.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I had that real familiarity with it. But yeah,
it's
really
definitely something. Yeah, it's certainly a tip of the tongue sort of a thing, but you just feel it on your fingertips when you're walking around different places that you visit.
So you're one of 5.
Yes.
What number are you?
4th of 5.
That is amazing.
It is. I think we're all getting together actually in a couple of days' time for my father's birthday.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So my older
Everyone
brother's-
still lives.
No, Queensland, and then the rest of us are here.
Okay, that's
So-
pretty. That's I love big families.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
What was school like for you then?
Go to Wales was pretty good. It was pretty intimidating coming from a chunk of primary school up in the Adelaide Hills down to the city, to PAC. So I enjoyed that transition, but it was nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
So my older brother had done it before me, and my 2 sisters had done the hills to city transition. So I knew it could be done, but you see it and you think, well, then you get into it, it's slightly different.
So you were really only the second kid from your class that was going, from your family that was going to the school?
The 4th to the school, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So my brother and then me, and then my little brother went along as well. So, yeah. But overall, once I'd finished it, I look back on it now, I love it. I love the experience, the people that I met, and the things that I learnt.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you still have the networks. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's still a great school. I still play for the Old Scholars Basketball Club.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
it's amazing how
it is.
people have those Old Scholars networks that continue and to do something healthy with your former classmates.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
You specialise in insolvency and forensic accounting.
Yes.
As you know, I also have an insolvency background,
Yes.
so we can nerd it up on that. But what drew you to the particular area of accounting?
I fell into insolvency accounting, to be honest with you. I did the first year at university and applied for the Chartered Accountants Achiever program. And through that, of a field of 300 or so, was whittled down into a group that managed to get a placement at a chartered accountants firm, and happened to be at Quarter Mentor then here in Adelaide. So I was there for a few years, and they kept me on part-time through university. Very fortunate to have been able to get that role.
Yeah.
And then I moved to another firm and got some forensic accounting experience too. So then sort of put that arrow in my quiver as well.
And it's it all works together perfectly.
It does, because the insolvency work requires a level of investigation that you can apply to the forensic accounting and vice versa. So technical skills.
So is there any one thing that you think causes a company to fail?
I suppose from my own opinion, what I see, it's a case-by-case basis. So that really depends on the company to which you're appointed. But in a general sense, the statistics say that it's poor strategic management of business.
Okay.
As a number one, there are a couple of other close ones. So high cash use or lack of cash flow. That can result out of a loss of major customer or some other disconnect between the director or shareholder or other employees engagers. So the number one element, though, is industry specific.
Okay.
So you're talking about farmers versus FMCG. That's or construction. Again, you're sort of talking about delays, head contractors, subcontractors, and the different issues. Again, it's a case by case basis, but that will change from industry to industry.
And I guess failure to innovate can
100%. It can be a huge leading cause if your customers require something of you, especially given it's 2019 and they want to see leading websites, they want to see engagement with social media and the like, regardless of what industry you're in. If you're failing to do that, that will certainly add up, and eventually people will start to walk away.
Yeah. So this is a question that one of my listeners asked me, and I thought it was super relevant in the insolvency space because other accountants who are listening, it could be relevant for them and for their clients. But can accountants be better apprised of risks that their clients face, not just the number side of the business? So what you're talking about now is those risks that they're not innovating, that they're not that they're using all the cash without having a buffer, or how can accountants who are working with clients help with seeing those risks?
I'd say communication is key. So firstly, understanding the industry and the market within which your client's operating. So to be better apprised of the law changes that are going on, any potential reform on the horizon. Again, like I said, with a farmer, that's a 10-year strategic management plan. You can't be looking at what's happening in the first 1 or 2 years. They need to have a 10-year plan.
Well, there's so many variables.
Exactly. You're fighting against the planet.
Yeah.
So, but also you can make strategies with other businesses that aren't reliant upon the planet and can have some more firm strategies. And then it's a matter of understanding how the customer base works for the client. Again, trends and movements in that industry in general, and then just talking to the people, because it may be something personal. What we see a lot of is clients will have marriage breakdowns, physical stresses, all sorts of issues, and they will disconnect from the business, and that will cause problems. The employees aren't inspired. They're not inspired. It's a capitulating thing. And when you've got tax debts on top of that sitting over the top of them and it's constantly weighing on them, that mismanagement really comes to the fore. So I'd say that's communication, definitely. Stay in touch with your clients.
Yeah, that tax thing is so important too. Like people just spend all their money and it takes 3 or 4 years for that tax debt to start being a problem, and then you've still got 2 years or
it's the slippery slope, which
like
we
a
see.
Snowball.
100%, because you have to deal with current debts as well as the existing outstanding
and
overdue
you're in this
debts.
habit of spending everything. So
instead of having to not pay the one, you then have to pay the two, and it just snowballs.
I remember once sitting when my husband had his business, there was like a massive tax bill, and the accountants were like, "This is how much tax you have to pay," and then they sat back and just waited for the reaction, and we, like Dave, super conservative, had a separate account for all the tags. And he's like,
Wow.
okay.
Yeah. Rainy day account. Yeah. It's well, I do see that quite frequently, but the difference between the accountant's feelings and their emotion and their empathy versus the client.
Or the experience with other clients who've just gone, where am I going to get that money from?
Exactly. Yeah. So you can talk about refinancing, but you're only ending up paying robbing Peter to pay Paul. So it goes around and around in a circle, and someone else ends up with the loot. It's unfortunate, but yeah, that's why we exist. So the business cycle requires rebirth and death. It's just as important as the life and growth part, which is always on the front page. You see a lot of good, and that's a good news story. That's fine. But sometimes restructuring is required just in order to try and shape things up a bit. So that's why we exist.
You wrote an article about the voluntary administration process. Can you explain what that is and what was the process that was in place before that came into effect 26 years ago?
Sure. I'll answer them in reverse order if that's okay, because the first one, I'm not a historian of insolvency. However, I believe it was called official management, but that was sort of a remnant, and then they had a big raft of changes, including the VA. And so for the last 26 years or so, it's been in place. There's debate about the effectiveness of it, and there's currently an inquiry about the effectiveness for small to medium businesses, and that's our sort of bread and butter here in Adelaide at Hall Chadwick. So we focus on that side of the restructuring turnaround, but the Kate Carnell-led inquiry is going to work at the effectiveness, or at least sort of ask questions about the effectiveness from the industry's point of view. I'm not going to make any personal comments about it. I suppose the firm has a view. The ARETA leading body has a view on it. I certainly do think there's some space for change in the current regime, but we'll see what happens. Watch this space.
Okay.
The voluntary administration process, though, is essentially designed to try and help a company get back on its feet. And if it can't, then to try and get a better outcome for creditors than would be if it was pushed straight into liquidation. So the voluntary administration process is quite short. The voluntary administrators have to decide if they need to trade or not. So shut the doors or leave the doors open. We tend to take commercial risks in relation to those sorts of appointments at Hall Chadwick. So we will try and keep the doors open and try and work through and strategize with the people involved to try and keep employees employed and the directors, keeping things under control. Yeah. So
but with more supervision.
With a lot more supervision. And that does require cost cutting on our part. So we will trim the fat on the business. Any major loss-making issues, we will shut down sectors if need be. But again, try to move it into the next phase of its life through a restructural refinance, somehow through that VA and DOCA process. So that DOCA, when I say DOCA, it's a fun-sounding word, but it's a deed of company arrangement.
Yes.
And that's the end result of a successful voluntary administration. Yeah.
Have you made any mistakes along the way that have helped with you getting to where you are today?
When you first asked me this, I thought I'd tell you about why it took me so long to get into accounting. But then, to be honest with you, because I only started back when I was sort of 27 or 28.
Well, let's talk about that first. And then if you've got two answers, we can do both.
Absolutely have two answers. The first one, the major mistake, I suppose, was trying to emulate what I saw on the movies with Michael J. Fox being a rock star. So I love the Back to the Future scene where he's doing that Johnny B. Goods.
That is great.
It is a good scene. And then I saw that as a kid and listened to that tape over and over and over as a kid. And then I thought, well, I'll try and be a musician straight out of school. Great. I learned an awful lot of stuff about sort of philosophy and business and everything at school. But I thought, no, I'll put that aside.
Being famous would be much more fun.
So that was a few years in the making. And I did enjoy that period of my life. So I did some audio engineering and whatnot. But then I came back to the realization that for security and for long-term growth, in my career, I probably wanted to move more to maths and accounting, finance, and a profession. So that was the major mistake in relation to my 20s, although I had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
It was ultimately a delay to get to where I am now. In my current career over the last...
Wait, you're a musician. Did you play? Did you sing?
I played bass.
Okay.
I played guitar.
Yeah.
But the guitar projects didn't go too much further than, say, the Jetty Bar Hotel.
Okay. All right. So you got paid to play.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and then I recorded a couple of albums.
Yes.
With a couple of bandmates.
Okay. So not on your own. It was like bands?
Proper
Did
bands.
you have fans?
I think so. I don't want to.
It was before social media?
It was, well, MySpace.
Oh, it was not before social media.
No. So I think so. But again, I try to ignore all of that side of it and just live my life and not get carried away with it.
The artist that you were.
Trying to push up, the skills and, the integrity of it all. But at the end of the day, it sort of all came to naught in the sense that I had a good time, but I didn't want to continue that moving forward. It was actually a hard life in the sense.
Was there like a moment of like reality check where it was like, okay, I'm not touring the world like Green Day. I don't even know the genre.
We toured to Victoria, so we played a few shows to Victoria,
cool.
and then I got back from that and reflected upon that. It was good fun. It was a good weekend. But at the end of the day, when I look back on it, I don't think there was one particular moment. I think there was just an aging maturity thing that was happening. So that when I got to that sort of 27, 28-year-old stage, I thought, well, I'm ready to mature into a next phase of my life.
Because I was a musician in primary school and high school. I did voice and I played the clarinet a little bit and I played like the viola da gamba, which is a Baroque instrument.
Wow. Okay.
Don't hear a lot of people say that. But I had drummed into me by my parents that was not a career path.
Oh, same here. Yeah, I just ignored them.
I was just Oh, you ignored them. Okay, yeah. And you was like, I'm going to give this everything I've got. And yeah.
So, and although my father told me not to become a lawyer, so I probably had that on you.
Is your father a lawyer?
He's a barrister. So he said, don't
You knew from experience.
Yeah, absolutely. But then I suppose moving forward, they basically opened the rest of the world up to me. They didn't push me either way.
Yeah, they said do anything.
Do whatever you like.
Yeah, that's pretty special. Yeah. And so then at 26, you went to uni?
26, 27, roughly around that age, sort of mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah, went back to uni, started commerce, and then, like I said, got into the chartered accountants and insolvency, and we are here today.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yep.
How do you feel what you do every day helps people?
Work-wise, we help people get back on their feet.
Yes.
So we try to. But if that's not possible, what we do is try to mitigate the consequences. There are going to be unavoidable consequences for running a business badly. If you can't restructure, refinance and do it without the involvement of a formal appointment or whatnot, then what we try to do is mitigate those consequences if it's appropriate. There are potentially some dodgy dealings going on and we investigate and pursue those. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to help South Australian businesses to thrive and survive. So if that requires a restructure, returnaround, then so be it. But if it's just simply a matter of pointing them in the right direction to say go to a business broker, you're not insolvent. We had this instance the other day. Someone
just
approached
sell the
us,
business, basically.
Sell the business or sell the assets, whatever you want to do. If you don't want to be involved, you can walk away. Just talk to a broker and that'll work.
Yeah. So connecting people with the right people at whatever stage of their journey that they're on, you can.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So
do you do safe harbour?
We do. We have an expert in Queensland in the national firm who does safe harbour per se, and I would happily take in a safe harbour engagement. It's just
a
not
relatively
that common.
New.
2 years.
Yeah.
So 2 years.
And so not that common. Like people aren't.
It's just not part of the conduct that we have been undertaking here in Adelaide lately. So it does happen and we do see it. And again, like I said, we've got our expert Jeanette Muller in Queensland who handles it. She does a national-based program, but I haven't done any directly.
Okay.
But I would.
Yeah, I know. It is relatively new, I suppose. So still trying to work out what it means in the landscape of insolvency, probably.
Yeah, I think there are some general objective points of view on that, but my personal point of view, whilst it's completely irrelevant, is that it may not be as effective as people hoped it would be.
Okay.
And it is a nice thought, but there are much more effective changes that could be made in the industry.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, again, that's not
another
for me to
story, really.
That's another episode. Yeah.
So what's your life motto?
Eat, drink, and love with gusto.
Oh, do you think that's from like your family background?
Being fourth of five, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when I was 4, my mum took me to the doctor because she thought I had hearing problems.
Yeah.
And the doctor just laughed at her and said, well, no, he's just the fourth. He's just trying to be heard above everyone else
you would
around the table.
More loudly than other people.
And try to get to the top of the crowd. So when I'm at a restaurant, usually if you hear somebody, it's probably me because I'm just trying to be outdo everyone else. Yeah.
That is a classic.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
I suppose given my daily activities, the first thought that comes to mind is what else is going on around town that's keeping me busy in the business and accounting sphere.
Sure.
A lot of work with the Chartered Accountants group here locally because I like to give back to them because they've given a lot to me, again, with my Achiever program status.
Yes.
And then also the program itself, the qualification. I, amongst a lot of other people, think that it holds a lot of weight, and I enjoy trying to get back to that community. So part of the not-for-profit steering committee, the public practice panel, and also, knock on wood, the regional council in the next year or two. So, yeah, no rush on that. I've applied, but I haven't got the position.
Okay, well, it's a leadership journey.
It is, like I say, it is.
And you're willing to serve.
Absolutely.
And it's give back. So whatever happens is...
It is what it
is. It is.
Yep.
What would you tell 18-year-old David?
Oh, that's a tough question, I think. We are different people.
Yeah.
So I would say potentially don't lose sight of what's happening around you in the present day, and don't get too wrapped up in the past or the future. Because at the end of the day, if I look back on my life and what's happened, I enjoyed every day of it, at every step of it. But I don't necessarily think that at the time I felt the same way because I was focusing too much on the past or the present, or past or the future, so not focusing necessarily on the present, just feeling that I was enjoying it, but potentially overthinking things too much.
We're going to keep this conversation going in our private Facebook group, Accountants on Purpose. You're welcome to join us there.